On Christmas, I was working a double shift in the emergency room. My parents and my sister told my 16-year-old daughter that there was no place for her at dinner. She had to go home alone and spend Christmas Eve in an empty house. I didn't make a scene. Instead, I took action. The next morning, my parents found a letter on the door and started screaming. I was in the emergency room, working a double shift on Christmas. The hospital was a mess. Patients everywhere, machines beeping, the smell of disinfectant mixed with burnt coffee. I'm Simon, an ER doctor, 42 years old. I've been at this for nearly 20 years, and this wasn't the first Christmas I'd spent surrounded by gurneys instead of family. But this time, something broke. My daughter, Lucy, 16, was supposed to spend Christmas Eve with my parents and my sister, Maria. I thought she'd be fine, eating turkey, opening gifts, surrounded by family. Lucy is the only thing that keeps me going. She's smart, funny, with green eyes that light up when she's excited. Her mother and I separated when she was 5, so I've been a single dad ever since. I do what I can, but being a doctor means long shifts and absences. That's why I trusted my family to take care of her that night. Big mistake. That night in the hospital was chaos. A guy came in with a heart attack. We tried to save him, but it was no use. Then a kid with a broken leg from playing with firecrackers. Amid the chaos, I saw a message from Lucy on my phone around 7:30 p.m. Dad, I'm home. Everything's fine. It seemed odd, but I didn't have time to think. Later, around 10, another message. I love you. Rest. Something felt off. Lucy doesn't write like that, so Kurt, especially on Christmas. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. The hospital was still on fire, so I went back to work with a knot in my stomach. I finished my shift at 6 a.m., exhausted. I drove home, thinking of sleeping a couple of hours before spending the day with Lucy. When I got home, the house was too quiet. I went up to her room and found her asleep, wrapped in a blanket, with a half-eaten plate of food on her desk. There was a box with wrapped gifts labeled for Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt Maria. My heart sank. I woke her gently. Lucy, what happened? I asked. She looked at me with eyes I'd never seen before, full of pain. They didn't want me there, Dad, she said, almost in a whisper. My heart raced. What do you mean they didn't want you? I asked, trying to stay calm. Then she told me everything. Lucy had arrived at my parents' house at 6 p.m. sharp with gifts she'd bought with money she earned working weekends at a cafe. She was excited. It was the first time she could give something more than a handmade card. But when she got there, my mother barely looked at her. My father told her she was late, though she wasn't. Maria didn't even bother looking up from her phone. When Lucy asked where to sit for dinner, my mother said with a cold smile, Sorry, there's no room for you at the table. The house is small, we can count on you. Stunned, Lucy asked if she could stay for a bit. My father cut her off. Better go home. This is for adults. Maria laughed and said, Yeah, don't worry, we'll send you leftovers. My daughter left the gifts in a corner and walked 3 kilometers home alone in the dark. She spent Christmas Eve alone, eating a frozen pizza. As Lucy spoke, I felt a rage burning inside me. It wasn't just what they did to her. It was everything I'd endured. I grew up in a family that always treated me like the odd one out for liking science. My parents mocked me for preferring books over parties. Maria, the favorite, was always a star. I was the nerd who graduated with honors and ended up paying for everything. Their house, their bills, a new car. I never asked for anything in return, only that they treat Lucy well. And they couldn't even do that. I didn't yell or call my parents to confront them. I sat at my desk, grabbed a pen, and started writing a letter. Each word felt like pulling a nail out of my chest. It wasn't just a letter, it was the end of something. I put it in an envelope and decided to deliver it myself that morning. I looked at Lucy, who was in the kitchen eating cereal. I'm going to fix this, I told her. She smiled, but her eyes were still sad. I know you will, Dad, she said. I left the house with the letter in hand. Knowing what was coming would change everything. I arrived at my parents' house just as dawn broke. The street was quiet, with Christmas lights twinkling on neighboring houses. I left the envelope at the door and rang the doorbell. I didn't wait for them to answer. I got in my car and left. I knew when they read the letter, everything would explode, and I wasn't wrong. I drove back home, my mind blank, the exhaustion from the double shift mixing with the rage still burning inside me. The letter I left wasn't long, but every word carried years of frustration. In it, I told my parents that the house they lived in, which I had paid for down to the last cent, was no longer theirs. I gave them 30 days to move out. It wasn't an impulse or revenge. It was justice. They had crossed a line by hurting Lucy, and I wasn't going to let that happen again. I also wrote that the financial support I'd given them for years ended that day. No more checks, no more paid bills, no more favors. If they couldn't treat my daughter like family, they didn't deserve anything from me. When I got home, Lucy was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching one of those Christmas movies that plays every year. She looked at me and asked, "What did you do, Dad?" I didn't want to tell her everything. Not yet. I just said, something I should have done a long time ago. I sat beside her, and for a moment, the silence between us was enough. But it didn't last. My phone started ringing around 8 a.m. It was my mother. I didn't answer. Then came a text from my father, followed by one from Maria. I ignored them all. I wasn't ready to hear their excuses, their yelling, or their attempts to make me feel guilty. Instead, I started making breakfast with Lucy. We made pancakes, the only thing I can cook without burning. She laughed for the first time that day when I spilled some batter on the counter. It was a small moment, but it gave me some peace. I knew what was coming wouldn't be easy. At noon, my mother showed up at the house. She didn't ring the doorbell. She just started pounding on the door like she wanted to break it down. Lucy froze on the couch, and I took a deep breath before opening the door. There was my mother, the crumpled letter in her hand, her face red with fury. "What is this, Simon? How dare you?" she shouted without even saying hello. Behind her, my father was in the car, watching from a distance, as he always did when things got messy. Maria wasn't there, but that didn't surprise me. She never faced problems head-on. "What the letter says," I replied calmly but firmly. "You have 30 days to leave. The house is mine, and I don't want it in your hands anymore." My mother started talking fast, mixing shouts with tears. How could I do this to them? They were my family. It was a misunderstanding, she said. There wasn't space. The house was full. They didn't want Lucy to feel uncomfortable. Every word was a weaker excuse than the last. I told her I didn't want to hear more, that what they did had no justification. I closed the door while she kept shouting. By the afternoon, Maria called me. Her voice was pure venom. "You're selfish, Simon. You always have been. Do you think you can throw Mom and Dad out on the street over a triviality? Lucy's fine. Nothing happened to her. I lost my patience. A triviality? You left her alone on Christmas, Maria. She walked 3 kilometers in the dark because you didn't have the decency to make room for her at the table." There was silence on the other end. Then she snapped, "Well, if you care so much, why weren't you there?" I hung up. It wasn't worth arguing with someone who would never understand. That night, while Lucy slept, I sat down to review the house papers. I bought it 10 years ago when my career started taking off. My parents had lost their home to debt, and I, the good son, stepped in. I paid every installment, every tax, every repair. I even gave them money each month so they could live comfortably. But that was over. I called a lawyer friend, Carlos, and explained the situation. There were no legal complications. The house was in my name. I asked him to start the eviction process and put the property up for sale. Carlos warned me that this could fracture the family forever. "It's already fractured," I told him. The following days were a whirlwind. My parents tried everything to make me change my mind. First came the pleas. My mother left voicemails crying, saying they had nowhere to go. Then the threats. My father texted that they'd sue me, though they had no legal grounds. Maria, meanwhile, started a campaign within the family, calling aunts, uncles, cousins, even some of my colleagues, telling a distorted version of the story. According to her, I was punishing my parents over a misunderstanding with Lucy. Some people wrote to me, asking me to reconsider. That family comes first. But for me, family was Lucy. A week later, my mother showed up again, this time with a different approach. She brought a box of homemade cookies, as if that would fix anything. She came in, sat in the living room, and started talking about the old days when I was a kid and she'd take me to the park. She tried to appeal to nostalgia, but it didn't work. I told her I didn't want cookies or memories. All I wanted was for them to understand the harm they'd done to Lucy. She insisted it wasn't their intention, that the house was full, that they didn't know Lucy would take it so badly. It's not just that night, I said. It's a lifetime of making me feel less, pushing me aside. And now you did the same to my daughter. For the first time, my mother had no response. She left without saying another word. Lucy, meanwhile, was dealing with her own pain. She didn't talk much about it, but I knew it hurt her. One afternoon, while we were studying together for her biology exam, she asked, "Why don't they love me, Dad?" It broke my heart. I told her it wasn't her, it was them, that some people don't know how to value what they have. I promised her I'd never let anyone hurt her like that again. She nodded, but I knew the wound was still there. To keep her busy, we started planning a trip, nothing fancy, just a weekend in a mountain cabin. I wanted to give her something to look forward to, something to remind her she didn't need anyone but me to be happy. Meanwhile, the eviction process moved forward. Carlos kept me updated. The paperwork was in order, and a real estate agent was already looking for buyers for the house. Each step made me feel lighter, like I was cutting chains I'd carried for years. But it wasn't all easy. One night, I got a call from an unknown number. It was my cousin Javier, someone I barely spoke to. He said my parents were staying at his place because they had nowhere to go. "Simon, this isn't right," he said. "They're your parents. You can't leave them on the street." I explained what happened, what they did to Lucy, but he just kept saying family doesn't abandon family. I hung up, tired of hearing the same thing. I wasn't abandoning anyone. They abandoned my daughter first. A few days later, Maria showed up at the hospital. She was waiting in the parking lot when I finished a shift. "We need to talk," she said, arms crossed. I tried to walk past, but she blocked my way. "You're destroying the family, Simon. Mom won't stop crying. Dad's sick from the stress. Is this what you want?" I looked her in the eye and said, "What I want is for my daughter not to spend another Christmas alone, because you don't know what decency is." For a moment, I thought she might slap me, but she just stepped back and left. As the weeks passed, my parents' house sold. The buyer was a young couple, excited to start a new life. I didn't feel guilt, just relief. The money from the sale went into a fund for Lucy, for her college, or whatever she wanted to do with her life. My parents and Maria kept trying to contact me, but I'd made my decision. I wasn't turning back. Lucy started smiling more. She went back to work at the cafe, joined a science club at school, and even started talking about studying medicine like me. Every small step of hers was a victory, but I knew the pain from that Christmas wouldn't fade easily. And though I stood firm in my decision, I couldn't help wondering if there was another way to handle it. But every time I looked at Lucy, I remembered why I did it. The months that followed were a whirlwind, but also a kind of liberation. The sale of my parents' house went through without a hitch, and the money, as promised, went into a fund for Lucy. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to give her a safety net for college or any dream she wanted to chase. My parents and Maria moved into a small apartment, paid for, according to Javier, with my father's modest pension. I didn't ask for more details. I cut off communication, blocking their numbers and emails. It wasn't easy, but each ignored message made me feel freer. Lucy, meanwhile, was blossoming. I watched her transform from a hurt teenager that Christmas into a strong, determined young woman. At the cafe, she won over customers with her smile and knack for remembering orders. At school, the science club became her refuge. She'd tell me excitedly about their experiments, building a volcano model or dissecting a frog. One night, over homemade pizza, she said, "Dad, I think I want to be a doctor, but not like you in the ER. I want to be a pediatrician, help kids. I laughed and told her she'd be amazing at whatever she chose. But inside, I felt a pride I could barely contain. Still, not everything was peaceful. The extended family kept pressing. My Aunt Rosa, my mother's sister, sent me a handwritten letter, something I didn't expect in this day and age. She said she understood my anger, but that I was destroying family ties and should forgive for everyone's sake. I read the letter, folded it, and put it in a drawer. I didn't reply. Then a second cousin, Miguel, tracked me down at the hospital after a shift. He said my parents were devastated, and that I was the only one who could fix things. I listened in silence, but when he finished, I just said, "If you care so much, help them yourself." He left without another word. Maria's persistence surprised me. After our parking lot encounter, I thought she'd give up, but she didn't. She started leaving messages on Lucy's social media. "Your dad's being unfair. Little one. Let's talk." Lucy showed them to me, and I saw the pain in her eyes as she read them. I told her she didn't have to respond, that Maria was trying to manipulate her. Lucy nodded, but I knew it hurt. Despite everything, Maria was still her aunt, someone who'd once bought her ice cream and played with her. We blocked Maria on all platforms, but the damage was done. One day, while cleaning the garage, I found the box of gifts Lucy had brought that Christmas. I'd completely forgotten about them. They were small, carefully wrapped. A scarf for my mother, a keychain for my father, a bracelet for Maria. Seeing them hit me hard. Lucy had put so much care into those gifts, and they'd tossed her aside like she was nothing. I took the box to her room and asked what she wanted to do with them. "Trash them, Dad," she said, half joking, half serious. We ended up donating them to a charity shop. It was a small act of closure for both of us. Summer came, and with it, our trip to the mountain cabin. It was a simple place with a nearby lake and a sky full of stars at night. Lucy and I spent the days hiking, fishing, though we caught nothing, and talking about everything and nothing. One night, sitting by a campfire, she said something that stuck with me. "Dad, thanks for choosing me." I didn't know how to respond. I just hugged her and said she'd always be my priority. That trip marked a turning point. I felt like, for the first time in a long time, we were building something new. Just the two of us. But life has a way of reminding you that not everything stays behind so easily. A few months later, in the fall, I got a call from the hospital where my father had been admitted. He'd had a heart issue, nothing serious, but enough to keep him under observation. My mother, through Javier, asked me to visit. I didn't want to go. The idea of facing them after everything turned my stomach. But Lucy, who found out by chance, said, "Go, Dad. Not for them, for you, so you don't carry this inside." She was right. My 16-year-old daughter was wiser than me. I went to the hospital on a Saturday morning. My father was in a room, hooked up to a monitor. My mother was by his side, and to my surprise, Maria was there too. When they saw me, there was an awkward silence. My father tried to speak, but his voice was weak. My mother broke the ice. "Simon, thank you for coming. We knew you wouldn't leave us alone." Her tone was soft, almost pleading, but it didn't move me. "I'm not here for you," I said. "I'm here to close this." I spoke clearly. I told them what they did to Lucy was unforgivable, that years of belittling me and then hurting my daughter couldn't be erased with tears or excuses. My father tried to interrupt, saying it wasn't their intention, that things got out of hand. Maria, true to form, said I was exaggerating, that Lucy wasn't that fragile. I lost my patience. "It's not about fragility," I said. "It's about respect, something you never gave me and denied my daughter." I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. That was the last time I saw them. My father recovered. I heard through Javier, but I didn't contact him again. The extended family stopped pushing, maybe because they got tired or realized there was no going back. Lucy and I moved forward. She finished the school year with excellent grades and earned a scholarship for a summer science program. I started taking things slower at the hospital, asking for shorter shifts, something I never thought I'd do. I wanted to be more present for Lucy, not just as a father, but as her friend. 2 years after that Christmas, everything was different. Lucy was in her final year of high school, applying to universities with a spark in her eyes that made me smile every day. The fund from the house sale grew with interest, and she was already planning to use it for a study abroad program. I found a kind of peace I didn't know I needed, not perfect, but real. The house Lucy and I shared became our sanctuary, filled with laughter, homemade pizzas, and bad movie nights. One night, while decorating the Christmas tree, Lucy asked if I ever regretted cutting ties with the family. I thought for a moment before answering. No, I said, I did what I had to do. You're my family, and that's all that matters. She smiled and hung an ornament on the tree. This year is going to be better, Dad, she said. And she was right. I don't know what happened to my parents or Maria after that day at the hospital. I don't care. Sometimes I think about them, but not with guilt, just a kind of quiet distance. I chose Lucy, and that was enough. Life doesn't always give you perfect endings, but it gives you the ones you need. And for me, watching my daughter thrive, laugh, and dream was the best closure I could ask for. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments, and subscribe for more daily stories.